Hello students, in today's class we are going to learn about behaviorism, one of the theories of second language acquisition. In our previous classes we learnt about the differences between learning and acquisition. We try to acquire L1 and we try to learn L2. I think you are clear with the difference. But the linguists believe that second language also can be acquired if we take certain steps in this process. Behaviorism talks about one such theories. Let's try to learn more about it. This is for the 5th semester communicative English students. This is Unit 1 in Course 6. Can you guess the meaning of the word behaviorism? You very often hear from your teachers about behavior. Okay, if you have good behavior, you will have good applause. Your teachers will appreciate you if you have good behavior. Do you think behavior depends on the circumstances? Do you think good circumstances will shape good behavior and bad circumstances will shape bad behavior? Yes, you are right. Our behavior is always shaped by our circumstances, always molded by our circumstances. You recognize this gentleman in the picture? You already watched a video. This is Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist who mentioned that behavior depends on classical conditioning. In the previous class, we also talked about Pavlov's experiment. Okay, I would like to bring it back to you for a quick recap. Right, he experimented on dogs and how they salivate when they see food. And he says that these things can be conditioned. And let us see what he has done in the experiment. Pavlov divided this process into 3 parts, like before conditioning, 1 and 2 belonging to before conditioning, during conditioning process, and after conditioning. You remember now, when the dog looked at the food, it started salivating, and then you see here it is unconditioned response. There is no condition here. Food is unconditioned stimulus. Okay, it has created a response, and what is the response it created? The salivation process is unconditioned. There is no condition here. And in this process, before conditioning, Pavlov introduced the sound of a bell, creating a neutral stimulus, a stimulus that will not create any effect, but he rang the bell. And when there is neutral stimulus in the form of the ringing of the bell, there is no salivation. The dog has not salivated. There is no response. No conditioned response is here. Neutral stimulus gave no response. But you see, Pavlov rang the bell along with the food. He showed the plate of food, and along with that he rang the bell. That created a response because the dog got used to salivate when it saw the food. That's why it started associating food with the ringing of the bell here. That was a kind of conditioning process. And here you see, as he started ringing the bell along with the food, the dog also started salivating, and it created an unconditioned response. After that, even without food, whenever the bell was rung, the dog started salivating. So this created a conditioned stimulus. The ringing of the bell created a conditioned stimulus, leading to a conditioned response. In the first part, there was unconditioned stimulus followed by unconditioned response. There was neutral stimulus, just the ringing of the bell without food. It did not create any response, but the food was associated with the ringing of the bell, creating an unconditioned response, just like the first stage. And finally, even without food, just the ringing of the bell created a conditioned response in the dog. This is called stimulus response theory. When there is a stimulus, there will be a response too. And this theory dominated during 1940s to 70s in both the fields of psychology and linguistics. There were several experiments done by people like scientists like B.F. Skinner, Edward Thorndike, and John B. Watson. They also conducted similar experiments about the process of conditioning. So how can we connect this to language acquisition now? On one hand, we are talking about stimulus and response, and on the other hand, we are talking about language acquisition. How can we connect these two things? You see, when you try to learn a new language, when a small child tries to utter new sounds in the new language, we praise them. We clap our hands. We praise them. That praise becomes a positive stimulus. And the more you praise, what happens? The more will be the reward. What is the reward? There will be a positive response from the speaker, from the learner, or from the child. You see, here the praising is stimulus. And what is the reward? Communication. More and more and more communication. That is the reward. In the same way, as there is a positive stimulus with a positive response, there is negative stimulus also. For example, when the learner makes a mistake, when you start speaking in English, when you make a mistake, what does the teacher do? The teacher immediately says, stop it there. You are making mistakes. Your grammar is wrong. Your language is wrong. The verb form is wrong. Like that, if he intervenes and punishes you, thwarts you, criticizes you, that becomes negative stimulus. And that yields in negative response. And automatically there will be a control on the production process of language. A positive stimulus results in positive response, and a negative stimulus results in negative response, right? When children try to imitate words, they need positive stimulus. And these positive stimulus will make them repeat the language forms, and thus they form the habit of speaking that particular language. It may be L1 or L2. Let us observe how children learn words. When the small children babble and try to make an effort, we praise them and we appreciate them. This appreciation stimulates them. It works like a reward and they continue to respond. And this is an example for positive stimulus. Let us see how negative stimulus works. When children make mistakes, if we criticize them, they will stop speaking itself. They do not stop making mistakes, they stop speaking itself. This is negative stimulus. Negative stimulus is also useful, but when you try to prevent bad habits, negative stimulus can be used. If you use negative stimulus in the process of language learning, if you stop them, if you control them, it will prevent the child from attempting learning a new language form. They cannot even try to attempt a new language form because they are afraid of using this, because they got a negative stimulus every time. So this kind of behaviorism, this kind of stimulus response, if there is positive stimulus from the teacher, there will be a positive response from the learner. This kind of behaviorism acts as a process of conditioning the learners. Learners can be conditioned. The process of learning can be conditioned. And language patterns of L1 in this process of conditioning, they become the habits. Let us see how habit is formed. What is this? What do you call this in English? Yes, it's a window. Right? Suppose there are two windows. What do you call them? There are two windows. Okay, what do you see through the window? We see trees. Okay, where is the window? The window is on the wall. For example, we are trying to learn a new language called XYZ language. In this XYZ language, we call this window a bitku. What is the word? Bitku. Please remember that. Suppose we call it bitku in the new language. Okay, now I'm asking you again, what is this? This is a bitku. Suppose there are two bitkus here. How many bitkus are there? There are two bitkus. What do you see through the bitku? I see trees through the bitku. So what are we doing? We're trying to form a habit here using a new language. If I make you use this new word repeatedly, whenever you see a window, what do you say? You try to apply the new word, you say it is a bitku. This habit formation will help you acquire a new language. And behaviorism helps us here. Stimulus is needed for that. Appreciation, praise is needed for that. That's why this is also called stimulus, response, reward theory. Let us try to sum up quickly. This theory is also called the stimulus, response, reward theory. This theory suggests that external stimuli can have an internal response, which in turn can have a response on the internal stimuli that will lead to external responses. If there is some stimulus for the learner, there will be an internal response and the reward will be communication. The process of learning is a process of forming stimulus and reward. This we should not forget. The stimulus, response and reward depend on the nature of the environment and the nature of the learner also. If the teacher is positive, if the learner is positive, if the stimulus is positive, the response also will be positive. The environment provides the stimuli and the learner provides the responses. The aspects of learning a language and environment provide the reward of comprehension and production. You understand it well and you try to produce it more. And this led to the discovery of a teaching method called audio lingual method. Hope you are able to understand. Keep learning and thank you